All right, I'm at 514. We're going to do something really sick. We're going to try to figure out how to graph y equals arc sine of 2x. Now you're thinking, oh, great. One more thing to graph. Can't figure this thing out. It's going to be way too hard. Actually, it's really, really, really not bad. The way it works is this. We recognize that arc sine is not something we want to graph. Just don't want to do it. But we do know how to graph some fairly simple, straightforward things. For example, I know how the opposite of arc sining something is to sine something. So I could sine y equals 2x. Now notice what I did here. All I did is I said, all right, opposite of arc sining something is sine something. So if I sine both sides, I end up with sine y equals 2x. I get rid of the arc sine, which is what I didn't like. Now this looks like it's good. I know how to graph this. I've seen this before, right? I can look at this in about 2 seconds and go, aha. If I were to isolate for x, I could get x is equal to 1/2 sine of y. And I'm feeling, all right, I got this. I know how to graph this, but there's a problem. Notice what's happened here. The x and y are in the wrong spots. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, without Mr. Resney watching, I'm going to quietly, on the side, graph y equals 1/2 sine x. Now, that's not the right graph. But it's darn close, right? It's the inverse, right? So I'm going to go ahead and set this up. I'm going to put this on my graph paper. I'm going to sketch it really fast because I know how to graph these now. I'm a pro. I've got 1 sitting here. I got -1 sitting down here. And I go like this. I go, aha. It's going to go, since the amplitude of 1/2, the original graph looks something like this, right? But if the amplitude's 1/2, I'm instead going to do this, right? Where I'm only getting to 1/2 and -1/2. Right? So now that I'm done with that, why bother? Well, because I know all I have to do is switch x and y. That's the definition of an inverse, right? X and y are switched here. So if I want to switch it, all I have to do is get out the new graph paper. If I get out the new graph paper, now what's interesting is pi is going to appear here, right? 2 pi is going to be here. There's going to be 1 here and -1 here, right? And so I know that when I'm at 0 over here, I'm at 0, right? 0.00. So I switch that, make it, well, 0, 0 over here. But things get better when I get to here. This is pi over 2, and it's 1/2. So the point over here is pi over 2, comma 1/2. Well, that's going to be 1/2, right? 1/2 right here, pi over 2. And then I go back over to this side graph. I look at his spot again. I go, aha! So it's pi is 0. So over here I get 0 pi. Now once I recognize the pattern, I go, aha, it's doing this. And I've got it, right? And so these things end up snaking up the x-axis, or up the y-axis. They typically look very similar to the graph you're graphing. It's just, again, they're running up the y-axis to the x-axis. It's a little tricky. People want to mirror image this. It's a little tricky to do that because you got to mirror image and rotate, and most people don't do well with that. Okay, so this is the way you're going to want to try it. All right, with that in mind, go ahead and try problem number 1. I will jump on and do problem number 1 right after this. So go ahead and pause this video, and when you're done pausing it, when you're done with problem number 1, I'll do problem number 1, and then you can check your answer. Okay? All righty. All right, if you're ready to try problem number 1, here we go. Problem number 1. I take a look at this and I go, all right. Arctan, I don't like that, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of the 1/2. To get rid of the arctan, I'm going to tan both sides. Tan of 2y equals x. Now I got this set up. I'm going to look at the problem and go, okay. So I'm going to pretend like the x and y are in the right place. They're in the wrong place. I'm going to fix that later. I'm going to pretend like the right place. So if I was going to graph this would be a tangent graph where the period would be equal to 2 pi. Remember, tangent repeats every pi over w, which is 2. So pi over 2. So a normal parent graph for tangent would look like this. And then down, and then back up like this. But now I'm going to repeat that every pi instead, right? So pi over 2 instead. So I'm going to go through this whole entire thing by pi over 2. So it's going to be really jammed up. So I picked a really bad scale for myself. So I'm supposed to be done at pi over 2. Okay? So now that I've made a little sketch for myself, though, I know that at 0, I'm at 0. I know that at pi, not pi over 2, I'm back at 0, right? I know halfway in between, at pi over 4, I am at undefined, or I have an asymptote, right? So then I go ahead and look over here. Now I'm going to switch. At 0, I'm at 0. At 0, I'm at 0. Bam. At 0, I'm at pi over 2. Remember, I'm switching x and y's, right? So at 0, I'm at pi over 2. At undefined, ooh, what's undefined? At undefined, I'm at pi over 4. So pi over 4, I have no values of x. Well, asymptotes are going up and down over here, right? So they're going to go this way when we do the inverse, right? So the inverse, at pi over 2, I have an asymptote. Now I look back over here to this side over here, and I recognize I'm going towards positive infinity. So I'm going towards positive infinity. And I'm starting at negative infinity and going into 0. Put some arrows in there. And then this spot here, I have another asymptote, because it repeats every what? Pi over 2 in the x direction. Sorry, phone call. All right. So it repeats every pi over 2 in the x direction. So now it's going to repeat every pi over 2 in the y direction, right? So if I have an asymptote, at pi over 2 right here, then I need an asymptote pi over 2 below that, right? And so this is going to scream down into here, go to negative infinity, and then I'm going to start at positive infinity, and then hook into there. And I am done with this graph. All right? All right. Go ahead and try problem number 2, and then read the rest of the instructions for the day.